Good evening. I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council for Wednesday, October 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And if the clerk would please call the roll.
Absolutely. Councilmember Blackwell?
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers?
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lyons?
Here.
Mayor Krantz?
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Thank you. And if you'd all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all. We do not have any special presentations or proclamations tonight, so with that, Madam Clerk, we'll hear from the public in oral communication.
Okay, and just a reminder, oral communications are to speak on items that are not listed on the agenda. First three speakers, Ellen Burr, Trina Priest, and then Katie Papaniak.
And I would add that because they are not on our agenda, we cannot comment. So, Ms. Burr, have at it. Not yet. I can't hear it yet. Now we can.
I could speak louder. No.
Yes.
Good evening. This is part two, since I didn't get enough time last week. Regarding legislative policy and direction, I would hope that our many agencies, groups that we are part of, and our experts in Sacramento are very good about sending us information that we need to know, and that mostly that endeavor last week was to add more direction to staff so that they may filter it, but make sure that it does get to council when it's important. But by the time stuff gets out of committee, it's too late. The sausage has been made and paid for. So even though they may be on recess, we can't wait to be commenting on something after it comes out of committee and out of assembly. It's just not going to happen. So we need to work together with other groups, other cities to make stuff happen. And next, mobility. About 3 years ago, when they first started putting in the bike path, I don't know why this sounds so weird, on the 101 South, I contacted a series of people in traffic and engineering about, well, how about golf carts? How about golf carts? How about golf carts? And I kept getting passed around, and finally the bottom line was we would need direction from council. So my ask tonight is, before we spend any more money on bike lanes that are too narrow or that have this very expensive paint put down, that we investigate making sure that they can accommodate golf carts that actually go slower than e-bikes. And you can carry 2 to 4 people and all of your shopping. And full disclosure, I don't own any stock in any of those golf carts, but I think you get more bang for your buck if you do a golf cart instead of a bicycle. Thank you.
Good evening, Encinitas City Council. I'm Mayor Krantz. I am a middle school teacher and a mother of 3 teens. As we are preparing for Red Ribbon Week, San Diego Alliance has assisted our schools by providing workshops for the PTA and PTO leaders in the Encinitas Elementary School District and San Diego Union High School districts. And through the Teen Presenters Program, high school seniors have spoken to 5th and 6th grade classrooms and in middle schools regarding good choice making as they enter their teen years. As we recognize Red Ribbon Week, I doubt there's ever been as important a time to bring about tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and drug prevention awareness. The tobacco and marijuana industries both continue to target youth shamelessly with products designed to appeal to the young, their next generation of dependent or addicted teens, users. State legislators continue to coddle the marijuana industry, encouraging and supporting the manufacture and sale of unprecedentedly high THC edibles that look like candies, cookies, beverages, and snacks that appeal to children. By the way, AB 1207, which this council supported, thank you, would have prohibited these products and did pass a bipartisan legislative vote. However, our governor vetoed it. The marijuana and tobacco industry produce youth-appealing e-pens and vapes now designed to look like school supplies and toys. For example, one is disguised and even doubles as a highlighter. These make for challenging times for teachers, parents, family, and youth. And so, the prevention community recognizes and appreciates you and all those who take their time to reaffirm their commitment to a drug-free environment. Thank you.
Good evening. You'll see you got a little red flashlight from San Diego Alliance. Please appreciate it, and there are several more to hand out to staff there. City Council, Mayor, Fire Department, Sheriff's Department, we appreciate all of you and community volunteers. Captain Lawrence has been wonderful during several of our community events and fentanyl presentations to offer Narcan to free to the public, which is very important. I've actually been two of the first on the scene class with the fire department. I'm Katie Papaniak, among other things, a study buddy director at Capri, and we just want to say thanks from San Diego Alliance, so that's why we're handing you the flashlights. Red Ribbon Week is from October 23rd through 31st, and it's in appreciation of the memory of Enrique Kiki Camarena, who was a USA DEA agent that really fought drug trafficking in Mexico. And unfortunately, he was tortured and killed in 1985 for his battle against illegal drugs. Coalitions were formed to honor his dedication and stress the importance for youth to live in alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and drug-free lives. I have the opportunity to work with these great big and little buddies. I feel so lucky that I live here. I've never lived in a place where there was a war. We have so many good things happening here, and I just like to kind of remember that because there's so much negative and anger and just not great stuff in the news right now, not good things going on. But I heard a senior from LCC speak to the Dequeño 7th and 8th graders this last week in the Teen Presenter program. And it was her sharing her experience that, yeah, there's lots of parties, I'm a senior, I can go to them, and it's okay for me to sit, to not drink, and other people are drinking. And she said, you know what, you just have to be comfortable in your own skin. And I love that. Wise from a teenager. It's just helpful to know there are many residents here in Encinitas and all of you that are doing things to try to make it a better place. Thank you.
Next speaker is Raul Villamar, followed by Scott Campbell.
You can change it. Okay. My name is Raul Villamar. I'm the Encinitas barber. I've been asking about the agenda, about the parking out in the front of everything on the street of 101. I'm still, the last month, it was the lowest month since we've had in depositing my accounts and stuff like that on it. These are some of the streets, pictures that I've been taking across the street. And these are the people that, the restaurants are bringing this kind of, they're all from the restaurants across the street. This is what they bring. This last picture, please. This is the 4th month that I've been taking pictures of. This is right where the Founders Street is. And I keep on taking a picture, and I keep on taking pictures. I have date stamps on it, and their van that's parked there, that belongs to the Baked Bear or one of the things, and they haven't cleaned back there. I don't know if Founders Street is a road, a drive, an alley. I haven't got an answer from you folks yet. I need, we got a ticket for 2-hour parking, and why aren't they getting a 2-hour parking? These pictures are all, keep going. all these pictures, if you can see, why isn't it being cleaned? There's mostly from the people that are coming from the restaurants, as you can see there. I called the Coastal Commission. I haven't got an answer from them. I don't know if you folks have a different number than what is on the website or and stuff like that on it. There's a van right there. Turn it back right there. There's a van there. That van right there. They have all these cars that coming out of that parking lot that can't. You can't turn. You can't turn left or right. I have to back up all the time to let the car go by because that van is blocking it. Where's the 2-hour parking? I talked to Ace, the gentleman from Ace. He said he was going to check on it. He never got back to us again. Behind Mauriceo's right now, Mauricio's and Roxy's, if you can go in again. That is, see the parking right there. It's all full. Is that a 2-hour parking? Who knows? Keep going, please. Behind Mauricio right here, Mauricio's and stuff like that on it. Don't they have to give back one parking spot for everyone that they've taken? That's theirs. Why do they get to keep their parking there back there? Is that an alley and stuff like that? Aren't they supposed to bring us, give us some parking back? I came by around that corner right now, and I haven't had alcohol in 35 years. I haven't smoked in all my life, but I almost got high because somebody was smoking pot back there. Is that what's going to happen when they open up the dispensary back here? Who knows? But that's all I have. If you have to keep going on the picture so you can see all those parking there. You have the trucks, the delivery trucks that come back there, and it's full. You can't drive back there. I don't know how an ambulance or a fire department are ever going to show up.
I do know that's an alley, and I do know that NCTD owns the parking lot, so we might need to talk to NCTD about cleaning it.
Okay.
But there are all sorts of complications with the public parking that goes on in those parking lots.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be back next week with more pictures.
Thanks.
A little bit higher. Okay, good evening, Council. My name is Scott Campbell. I live in Encinitas District 1. And I guess I got to follow up on some of the speakers. Let's start off with the golf carts. I actually saw a family today on the way to school in a golf cart. And what I thought about is that looks really cold. It looks really cold. I was thinking, what are they going to do when it rains? They're going to get in a car when it rains. But the golf carts, I didn't think about speed. The parking, the NCDD parking, I complained about that. And you know what? It's actually been cleaned up. It has been cleaned up. It's amazing. But why I'm here tonight for this general talk is street dining. That's kind of brought up a little bit now. On February 22nd, the city declared its emergency declaration over. On April 27th of November of 2022, we said November or December 31st, it's out of here. That was confirmed in the February meeting. Assistant City Manager Roy said it ends on 12/31. They're going to be out of here. Now, the mayor also mentioned something about a project to keep it going. So my ask is, if this is going on, I'd like to hear about this now, and I think the city would like to hear about this. If there are major plans to continue the street dining, otherwise we should take it out. Next month, there's the street fair. The April street fair was pretty crowded with the street dining. There wasn't much room. It was tough. In December, there's the Encinitas Holiday Parade, an Encinitas tradition. It sure would be nice if we had additional room for the parade entrance and the spectators to view it properly without all the street dining in the way. So my ask is to actually get rid of it now, because there's been discretion, and we could apply this now. The 3-month grace period has been over for months and months, and I haven't talked about it very much at all. We could say tomorrow, you know what, we're sick of it, get rid of it. So that's my ask, is to get this done and commit to it. And if there is something going on, please place us on the agenda for discussion tonight and bring this to the city's attention. Thank you.
Mayor, that does conclude oral communications.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us. And with that, we will move to item number 6, the report from closed session. and I will ask the city attorney to provide that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The special closed session that started at 3:30 this afternoon. City Council went into closed session on 2 items. The first item was conference of labor negotiator under Government Code Section 54957.6 with Encinitas Service International Union, Local 221, Encinitas Battalion Chiefs, IAFF, Local 5376, Encinitas Firefighter Association, and unrepresented employees. And the City Council took no reportable action when in closed session. The second item, closed session, conference of legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case under Government Code 54956.9, subsection D2, 1 case. The City Council met in closed session and took no reportable action on that item either. That concludes closed session report.
Thank you. And are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda, and then moving to the consent calendar, item 8F has been pulled by a member of the public.
Okay, so that leaves 8A, B, C, D, E, and G on the consent calendar.
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 8F. And the speaker is Scott Campbell. Scott, did you want a staff report, or did you just want to make comments?
I'd like to speak, actually.
Okay.
The city has $145 million in the bank. That's a lot of money. That's too much money for the board of directors to just pass on a line item, consent item to not talk about. I mean, that's your prime job, is to take care of the city's money. So while reviewing this, there's some nice charts, and the finance department is awesome. I love the finance department in the city. And this shows our current yield versus the interest rates, and this is expected. We have a long-term stability, and we're very conservative with our investments. You know, this is to be determined. It's just interesting when this changed, when we crossed over, it's when the interest rates went up, but it's also in 2021, when other things happened, when we changed our code, when we decided that we weren't going to invest in certain things. So Resolution 2021-67, we decided to stop investing in fossil fuel, alcohol, and tobacco. I just want to know that the city makes a lot of money from those products. And it's kind of ridiculous for us to not invest in companies that legitimately make money in the open market, and yet we receive incredible tax revenues from those same products. It doesn't make sense. We should, if they're making money for us in one way, we should make money for them in other ways. This is true. We should rescind this resolution. This is part of the Blakespeare social agenda stuff. And we talked about this last week. Social stuff on our legislative policies was talked about. And I believe it was discussed that we were going to get rid of some of the things. This is important stuff. On this chart, over $4 million is directly from fossil fuels or use of fossil fuels. It's the hugest part of our budgets. Come on. Okay, this is the top 25 sales tax producers in the city. 9 of them are directly involved in fossil fuels. Once again, how can we not invest in them? We're making bucks from them. 6 of the other people are indirectly involved in alcohol sales. The hotels, the Pacific Coast Grill, Walmart, Vons, they sell a lot of alcohol too. 7-Eleven, they sell a ton of alcohol. Now, what's interesting on that chart on the left is, I don't know if this is right, pools is 18%. It's kind of interesting. But look at the total for fuel, so light blue, and autos in red. It's 9 plus 15, 24%. It's the biggest total of our sales tax producers. Once again, we should really be supporting these people. Are there any questions on this investment strategy? I didn't think so. Thank you.
That does conclude speakers.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any requests to speak, but I will say that I continue to support the divestiture of city's investment resources in alcohol and fossil fuels. So I also was pleased that the report is pretty positive. So I think that having it on consent is perfectly reasonable. And with that, I would move approval.
I'll second.
Wait. Councilmember Ehlers.
There we go. So it's interesting. I was serving as a CFO on a nonprofit board, and we made a very similar decision probably about 8 years ago to shift away from far more than even this. We went far greener because that was what the nonprofit was about. And we actually found that the returns were not as bad. At that time doing it, we got much better returns than I ever expected, and it had much less. So when I read through tonight's policy, it's actually quite a flexible policy. It's more flexible than what I had, what our board gave me last time, or at my previous role. And it really is just direct investment, substantial direct investment in fossil fuel, alcohol, or tobacco. It even has a caveat that for mutual funds or incidentals, or it's almost a best effort if you read through the whole policy, yeah. So it is really pretty flexible, and I support this because, quite frankly, I don't think, other than maybe alcohol, I don't think tobacco is a good investment, period. Tobacco use is declining ultimately. I would say the same about fossil fuel. There is a limit, and the climate change is driving the money away from that. You see it in the historic fossil fuel companies. They're diversifying their own income. So then the question becomes, well, if Shell gets out of, like they've claimed, gets out of fossil fuel, are they a fossil fuel investment or not? I don't know. But what I liked about this policy is it gave the Director of Finance or designee some leeway. And so I support this too. But I understand your statement, and I understand why, but I think in the end, this is actually also good investment advice too. The numbers you were quoting were just the sales tax revenue, not the overall budget. And so what we really should be looking at is what was the amount, how much less income are we gaining because we weren't in those actual investments? And my belief is it's pretty small, that most of our investments are in pretty conservative, the state funds, the mutual funds, they're by definition, and I do support a very conservative policy. So with that, let's see, we got a second, so I'm supporting this too.
Motion carries unanimously. That concludes the consent calendar. That takes us to item 10A.
Okay, 10A, Stormwater Best Management Practice Design Manual Update. Presentation will be by our Environmental Programs Manager, Steenblock. Eric, take it away.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight we're considering adoption of the 2023 Stormwater Best Management Practices Design Manual, otherwise known as the BMP Design Manual. So let me just kind of walk through some of the backdrop of what the Stormwater BMP Design Manual is. So essentially, it establishes water quality design standards for significant and redevelopment projects. Sort of the core tenet of the BMP Design Manual is to improve the quality and control the quantity of runoff, and in some projects, reduce the rate of runoff or slow down the runoff. It's regulated and defined by the 2013 San Diego municipal permit, or the municipal permit, so that establishes sort of our regulatory backdrop for the BMP Design Manual. It establishes the standards and the requirements that are intended to be met to maintain compliance with the municipal stormwater permit. There has been a regional model developed and approved by the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board that our BMP design manual has been built around and developed around. Our most recent locally adopted version of the BMP design manual is in 2016, but I think it's important to note that an earlier version was back in 2000. We've had versions since 2008, and even before that, under kind of a different heading. We had another revised version in 2010, and then again in 2016, and here we are in 2023, looking to update it again. So this is just a visual slide to sort of interpret what does the BMP design manual do? What's the outcome from the BMP design manual? And so essentially what you're looking at are pictures of drainage facilities that have been designed and constructed in compliance with the BMP design manual. A lot of these, to the uninitiated, you don't even notice that they're there. You don't see them. They're incorporated seamlessly into project design. But the reality is that these facilities are engineered specifically to meet requirements to, again, reduce runoff and control or improve the quality and control the quantity of runoff from these developed sites. So this is just a visual to show you how this looks in the field. So another sort of framework piece that's important to go over and just establish when the next slide I'll be going over the specific updates to this manual. So this is sort of the establishment of a sort of tiered priority or type of project, each going sort of from top to bottom. Each of these project types has a different set of sort of performance standards that's required. From top to bottom, they all include what's called source control and site design features. But if you start at the top, at the priority development project, just to kind of scale it, that's more in the space of like a large subdivision or a large commercial development. They have to also meet structural pollutant control or treatment control requirements and hydromodification, and that's that rate of runoff that I was talking about in the prior slide. In the middle tier, you have the standard projects, just to scale it, probably more like a single-family home type of a project. Again, you have the source control and site design features required, but you also have a treatment and a runoff reduction, or basically a volume reduction requirement for standard projects. And then you have all the rest of the projects, essentially the basic projects. These are the smaller projects, but they do have a baseline requirement of source control and site design. When I say source control and site design, that's everything from directing your rooftop runoff into a landscaped area to covering outdoor storage areas to prohibitive signage on like a storm drain or something like that. So really basic controls. All right, so now with all that lead up, and I know it's shocking to distill down an 800-page document to basically four updates, but essentially that's what we've got here. So baked into that 800 pages, you've got the first one is revised baseline BMP guidance fact sheets. Really, that's a usability feature. That's something that's evolved since our 2016 manual. They're regionally developed, so we've worked with our project our jurisdictional partners in the region, including the county and all of the incorporated cities, to update these fact sheets. As it says here, it applies to all the project types. The other piece that's important on the revised fact sheets is it provides some consistency to the development community as they come in, look to design their projects. It's not completely different from all the jurisdictions throughout the county, so it provides some consistency. So we thought that was important to build into this update. Number two is the additional compliance pathway for what's standard project types. So a reminder, that's sort of that middle tier, single-family home as an example. There is now compliance credit for runoff capture and reuse, which was not built into the manual before. And so that just provides an opportunity to gain credit for essentially, there's sort of a standard that they have to meet for, it's called a design capture volume. And you can use capture devices, let's call it a rain barrel, let's call it something that can capture and reuse the water, other capture type devices or features, maybe even like a green roof or something like that. So there's some ways to meet those requirements in those standard projects that weren't available to applicants before. Number 3 is the additional compliance pathway for priority development projects. Priority development projects, again, are that kind of highest tier. They have the highest threshold. The most engineered systems typically go in place. For a long time, proprietary systems, or basically manufactured treatment systems, have been on the market. But when we adopted back in 2016, there was a little bit of uncertainty about the efficacy in terms of their treatment ability, and if they met the municipal stormwater permit compliance standard. So we hadn't built that in. Since that time, some other cities have sort of gone before us and sort of worked out some of these details, and we spent the last few months also working with our partners at the Regional Water Quality Control Board to identify that we could build that into our manual as well. So that provides just another opportunity. Proprietary systems are really valuable in the sense that they can configure to a smaller space and maybe provide that opportunity for treatment without taking up such a large project footprint. And then the last one is the clarified definition of routine pavement maintenance projects. So pavement maintenance can go from just a simple overlay to existing pavement to completely removing and replacing pavement. And so in our existing manual, there wasn't a very clear definition of what distinguishes it as maintenance and what distinguishes it as a replacement project. And why that's significant is because it defines what level of additional controls that you need to put into that project. So there's some real benefit, not only to public projects, but also private projects, both on maybe large parking lot areas, on the public side. There could be something like an ADA facility that we need to build out, and if we had to remove a certain amount of pavement to make that configuration, it wouldn't trigger a larger set of requirements that would be really cumbersome and burdensome to that project. So with that, we're open to any questions. I've got my project team here. I've got Paul Meckler of our stormwater group, who was the project manager on this. We've got, where did everyone go? Mike Stryzik is back there. He's the principal engineer. He's in our land development group. Our land development group and our CIP group, they're really the practitioners of this. So they're the ones that see the projects come in and hold them to those standards and help guide the project applicants toward achieving these requirements. We've also got, we're fortunate to have a staff member from the Regional Water Quality Control Board join us here tonight to help us answer any questions as far as the regulatory backstop. And then there's Sylvester. He's here to help us too. I didn't even see him sitting up here. So here we are. We're open for questions. Thanks.
And we call Sylvester the Director of Public Works, do we not?
I call him my boss,
Yeah,
but
there you
yes,
go.
I do refer to him as that as well.
Okay, Councilman Ramsey.
Thank you. So this seems like a little bit of a dense issue, and I had a hard time making it through the staff report, but I know that these changes and updates are really welcome to a lot of members of our community who are doing ADUs and small projects and little additions here and there. I think it's really wonderful that we are now giving credit for capture and reuse, because over the years I've heard a lot of people complain about the pit of despair where they had to just create a basin that they couldn't use for anything else other than for stormwater. So that's really positive. And I just had a question because one of the residents who I worked with over the years, she was really frustrated that we couldn't just incorporate some best practices that she'd seen in other cities or other parts of the state. So from 2016 to now is sort of a long way to go as water is becoming more and more precious and our management of it is becoming more sophisticated. So my question is, are we able to make updates along the way if we can find some improvements?
That is a good question, and the answer is yes. We've actually built because what we from staff level figured out was that we can offer some allowance. Actually, there's a statement in the resolution that offers some allowance for basically administrative staff level updates, things that are not significant. They're not changing the compliance standards. They're not changing anything like that. So if updates or opportunity to update presents itself and we can make an assessment that it's not more than an administrative update and we don't have to bring it back to council, it can happen a lot more expeditiously. And we can just make updates as we go. Yeah.
Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you. I agree that sometimes stormwater management BMPs can sound a little bit like alphabet soup, but it's one of the most important environmental protections I think we have in our toolbox. And I want to call that out, and I want to also call out that I am really impressed that we've been able to integrate these important new and somewhat innovative BMPs into our standard toolbox for stormwater management. Thank you. That's awesome, and I agree with Councilmember Hinsey's suggestion that we stay on the crest of the wave and stay informed and stay updated. One of the things I want to just share with the public, because the public shares this with me, we have some stormwater challenges here in our city, and maybe the public, when they come to me and my colleagues and they say I have an issue, they don't know that it's called stormwater management, and they don't know that we have BMPs to address it. But the reality is, in older neighborhoods like I have in my district, District 3, in the Cardiff area, we can picture the Composer District, the Walking District, that the houses are older, the roads are older, the alleys exist. There's a lot of paved surface. Maybe the density or houses are closer together. At the same time, so there's that situation. And as we evolve and as we look at the redevelopment of each of those properties, what happens is sometimes we end up having more paved surfaces. For example, in our alleys, where we no longer have as much permeable soil as we have in the past. We've talked about this here up on City Council when it comes to any kind of development, that there's a challenge with the reduction of permeable surfaces, which then leads us to need to address some of these really nice and really improved BMPs like cisterns and rain barrels, and that's how we address that. But this new version of our BMPs allows us to look at our maintenance program and see where the city can do better for applying BMPs under our maintenance to improve the situation in these neighborhoods. What can happen and what sometimes does happen and what people come to talk to me about is that all of a sudden, a lot of water becomes concentrated in an area where it didn't used to be concentrated because there's more impervious material on the ground plane uphill from it. And so what that does is that collects the sediment and goes to the ocean and creates a water quality issue in the ocean. Not only that, but because the water builds up and it's got sediment in it, it can create damage to our slopes and erosion. So environmentally, there's a lot of big impact that happens because of water falling on the land and moving soil through our community, or sediment through our community. Everything that we do to improve that is good. We will continue to try to find where there may be gaps in our policies so that we can even do better in the future. And I'll continue to talk to Manager Steenblock and Director Mabry to come up with more improvements as we move into the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
And just clarification, are we asking questions of clarification? Do we have public speakers, or are we going straight into deliberation?
No public speakers.
Okay, cool. So kind of a mix. So I'll start with questions of clarification. Having planning commission experience, of course, I'm used to the BMPs, and I assume this has not changed. Limit the flow rate of water over the property line, but not the total volume. So as a property adds impervious surface, they have to buffer that water. And there was one of the summaries of the changes, page 11, and I think I understand this, is that for the 85th percentile storm, you have to buffer all that rate volume on site. Is that new? And if so, can you characterize generally, are the BMP retention ponds have to be larger volume now or not as a result of that change?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. Michael Stryzik from the Private Development Engineering Group. To answer your question, when we're looking at volume of runoff as per se, We're also taking it from a drainage perspective as well, outside of the stormwater. So in that sense, we will not permit the runoff rates that are coming from a site to be any more so than what they were prior to development. So with that said, is outside of the stormwater component, we're looking at drainage studies that are required to show us their detention analysis. That detention of rainwater is meant to throttle back the amount of runoff rates that are coming from those sites as to not create any more impact than what it was prior to development. And those detentions end up existing within the BMPs themselves. So when we're looking at the sizing of the BMPs, they're utilizing these BMPs as a means to go ahead and create a detention process for it. So that is for a 100-year storm event that we're looking at. So walking outside of your question regarding the 85th percentile,
Right.
you know, a 100-year storm event, which is our biggest concern of when we have these flooding issues, we should be seeing in the post-construction phase of a project no more runoff coming off that site than previously. And what's happening is with these BMPs are being utilized to go ahead and function in a dual purpose. One is to have the pollutant control aspect of everything, but those basins, they're being designed by these engineers when we're looking, they're utilizing them for that drainage component as well.
Okay, so one was hydromodification, the new is hydromodification, or sorry, the old was hydromodification, the new is treatment.
So
And so is the bottom line answer is they really aren't bigger now as a result of this?
No.
Is that true or false?
So here, just to kind of explain. So pollutant control is still part of the component, always has been. Hydromodification is a component that comes into play with priority development projects, as Eric here had explained earlier, larger scale projects. But the what I'm talking about is a typical engineering practice, which regardless of a basin, you're not allowed to admit more than the same runoff rate as prior. So what I'm trying to say is that when people are designing, when the engineers are coming forward and designing their projects, they are required, anything over 500 square feet of impervious area requires a BMP to be what we call a structural BMP to be put in place, i.e. a biobasin, but right now with our changes, we allow for cisterns and other things as such. Those devices have been designed to not only serve the function of the requirement of capturing the impervious area that's been created, but engineers are also utilizing them in their design to go ahead and meet the separate requirement that's separate from stormwater quality, which is drainage, which drainage states that nothing in a 100-year storm, the flow rate must remain the same as it was previous to the new construction. Yeah. I don't know if that's clear fully, but.
Just to cut to the chase.
Sure.
So before the modifications we're doing tonight versus after, the BMPs are roughly the same size?
The BMPs will yes, yes, they're the same size as far as the detention, the design capture volume. We're just opening up the utilization of other means of structural BMPs to meet that same requirement.
Okay, and then last question, clarification would be, the example, can you give examples of the proprietary systems? This is for the priority development projects. The proprietary systems that was mentioned in the presentation. What are examples of something? And I think this is the case where they might be more compact, right? And
Yeah.
give an example.
Yeah, I'll give you an example.
Those.
They're proprietary, so they're all like someone makes them. So I don't want to, boast any particular product, but a good example is like a tree well. So it's basically a boxed system that essentially presents itself as a storm drain inlet, right? But inside that inlet, there's a tree box that's growing. And so there's a tree coming out at the surface, but it's a boxed system. So essentially that tree and that soil and that root matter is intended to provide that treatment to that stormwater. Instead of sort of a linear system, which you saw a lot of that visually, you get more of these boxed systems that they have to hold the water for a certain amount of time and filter it through the so they configure really compactly.
And they provide the same function as the larger area linear ones. Okay,
That's right.
Cool.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And thank you. That answers my questions. I'm supporting this too. Thank you. And I really appreciate the fact that it leverages a common base throughout the county, because everybody works in all the different cities, and having different manuals for different fundamental manuals. Obviously, we have our own manual, but basing it off a common denominator, I think, is a wonderful idea. So, thank you.
I'll move approval of this item.
And I'll second.
And before we vote, I'd like to make a few comments myself. I am very pleased to see this come forward. I would say finally. It has been frustrating to me, the inability to use the manufactured detention basins. And I don't know if it's possible to bring up page 100 of the staff report, but it's got some illustrations on it that I wanted to be sure to share. I also would say, while you might be working on doing that I am not afraid to mention proprietary manufacturers of these. And I would encourage everybody to take a look at stormtrap.com and look at their facilities. They have done some amazing videos of ways that stormwater can be captured and reused. I am very focused on stormwater harvesting, and this particular page has an example of that. Harvest and use is the BMP category, and HU1 is cisterns, and that water gets reused. I have been told by the city engineer that apparently there are some rules about stormwater that has to be used within 72 hours, which I think is a little bit crazy. I don't know why water sitting in a cistern underground would need to, why we would have to use it in an urgent fashion. I think one of the things that kills me about storms in our city is that they come oftentimes in droves. All that water goes away. So if there were a way to capture and reuse it in periods that were dry, it would be much better. So the first category is cistern, and it's harvest and use. So would a developer have to come to us with a plan to pump and use that water? How does that work?
That's exactly right. So, essentially we establish the standards and then a developer would bring in their design. They have the opportunity. Basically, the changes that are before us tonight provide that opportunity for them to bring these forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are the other infiltration, unlined biofiltration, lined biofiltration, flow-through treatment. And I do know from my environmental friends that the earth is the most efficient filter of, and so no mechanical system is necessarily better than the biofiltration that we get with the earth. I understand that, but my goal is to try and implement techniques that allow us to harvest this water. And the other question that I have is, our 100-year storm, we have these projects that get designed for that, but beyond that, if we end up like we did a few years ago with a 380-year storm or whatever, then it's just these BMPs are not expected to necessarily manage that water.
Correct. Yeah.
And so one of my favorite examples is Leucadia Oaks Park, which has a volleyball court. And that development takes all their stormwater and kind of fills up the volleyball court. It's got a bowl around it, and then it's got pipes that are 4 feet above that. And then once the water reaches that level, it goes into the railroad corridor and ends up in the lagoon. But until it gets that high, that water all goes into the sand of the volleyball court. And I think that's a great way to treat the stormwater. I didn't serve on the Planning Commission, but I have been fixated on the notion of eliminating hydrophobia and harvesting stormwater since a long time ago. I think we're ready to vote.
Motion carries unanimously. Takes us to item 10B.
Thanks for the efforts. Okay, item 10B is a presentation on Assembly Bill 43. And we're going to get a summary and open the conversation up for direction on future implementation. And we're going to hear from our city traffic engineer, Abe Bandigan.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of public. A. Bandigan, City Traffic Engineer, presenting tonight a summary of Assembly Bill 43. I'm requesting some direction about future implementation of this bill in the city. As you all aware, the current law for establishing speed limits in different states is pretty much similar. In California, speed limits are established based on the 85th percentile, which is at a speed which 85% of the vehicles drive on a road in standard regular free flow conditions. Based on that surveys, we prepare an engineering and traffic survey document that establishes a speed limit, which is used by our deputies for processing speed limit citation, violation citations, and when they go to court, these documents, these engineering and traffic surveys are reviewed by judges, and the tickets are either dismissed or they are accepted to be valid by the judge. Last year in October, our governor signed Assembly Bill 43, which made several changes to the way speed limits are established in cities of the state. A lot of new options are introduced for city officials to be able to lower speed limits in different corridors of the city. The California Vehicle Code, CVC, has been updated in 2023 version and incorporated the language of the bill into the California Vehicle Code. Obviously, our practices and the way judges review tickets are based on language of the CVC. It's not based on the bill. And then California MUTCD, very recently, a few months ago only, changed to incorporate the language of California Vehicle Code and provide guidelines to traffic engineers on implementation of AB 43. Our anticipated process of AB 43 and how we want to implement it in the city, we provided a summary to the Mobility Commission, received some recommendation earlier this month. This is a very, very simple page showing one of the pages of the engineering of traffic survey. We go out there, we survey the street with a radar, a minimum of 100 vehicles. We capture what their speed is, mark them up on the field sheet. It has to be a non-peak period. The vehicles cannot be tailgating each other. Basically, 100 individual vehicles that are unaffected by the other drivers around them. Shouldn't be rainy, shouldn't be at night, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be in a marked car or a sheriff car that would affect the drivers. They have to be in a unimpeded free flow situation. And then after we capture it, we sort them, and the 85th would show us what the speed limit should be. Currently, the rule is after we survey the road, we round it down to the nearest mathematical number of 5-mile increment. As an example, if the 85th comes back at 47, we round it to 45. And then currently, we have a rule that allows us to lower it by 5 mile if there are factors that are not clearly available for the driver to understand the situation of the roadway. Factors like bike and pit facilities not being available, geometry of road, there is a bad grade, there is a bad curve, collision history of the road, being there is a school there. If there are those conditions, we can lower the speed limit from 45 to 40. But those conditions, based on the code, should not be readily apparent to the driver. And this is a speed survey document that currently we have for all of the speed limits on different roadways of the city. And this is basically the document that our deputies take to court whenever a ticket is being challenged. Now, what the changes are. So more emphasis is going to be given to bike and pedestrian safety, as I'll explain a little bit more. An additional 5 mile per hour reduction is introduced for city officials to be able to add. So we have the original rounding, we have the original 5 mile reduction based on conditions not being apparent to the drivers, and now we have an additional 5 mile. So technically, the speed survey can be lowered by 12 miles, a total of 12 miles with the AB 43. 2 new areas can be defined by cities by ordinances, And in these areas, the city will be able to lower speed limits by additional 5 miles. One area is safety corridors. Another is areas with high concentrations of bikes and pedestrians. And I will explain those two a little bit more further in the presentation. There are options now in California Vehicle Code based on AB 43 to establish 20-mile and 15-mile-per-hour speed limits. We did have some options before. Now it's a lot more clear in the CVC. Now we have a new definition for business activity districts and senior zones and how they're implemented. We have another item tonight on business activity districts in the city. The way engineering and traffic surveys expired before, based on the conditions, it was a 5-year, 7-year, or 10-year expiration. Now they can be valid up to 14 years. And then under the new AB 43, if a ticket is issued in a location where we have lowered the speed limit, unless they are more than 10 miles over the speed limit, the first ticket has to be a warning citation only. I mentioned the two new areas that we can lower an additional 5 mile. One is the safety corridors. Based on the language of the CVC and the MUTCD, we can apply this to a 20% of the total roadway network of the city, which that 20% is about 34 miles. It has to be chosen, these safety corridors have to be chosen based on a collision history. The language is somewhat flexible, but it does provide some guidelines on how those roadways can be selected, and there are new MUTCD guidelines for their selection. But that's 20% of the roadway network of the city. The second one, roadways adjacent to facilities that generate high concentration of bikes and peds. It's a lot more flexible. California Vehicle Code incorporated this in there, but leaves the selection of these high concentration generators to MUTCD. And MUTCD in its last revision created a list of land uses that can be used for this purpose, and it's a very big list. Within quarter mile of all these land uses, we are allowed to implement this additional 5 mile reduction. Collision history is also mentioned to be utilized if we want to, and there are some samples given. This is a list that California MUTCD in this revision 7, the most recent revision, added. These are all the areas that CVC does consider high concentration of bikes and peds. As you can see, its coverage. I have some pictures that shows how much it can cover. It's a very, very big list. So in short, we can implement lower speed limits, an additional 5 mile lower than what we have out there in areas within a quarter mile of these high concentration of bikes and peds, and also choose selectively, based on council's direction, 20% of city roadways, obviously based on some collision history, to lower an additional 5 mile over what we have out there. Now, why we're here tonight, we have a slide further that we provide the timeline of things. This, as you know, will not be implementable until July 1st next year. We want to come back to council and provide the ordinance to council for adoption, but the direction we need is, based on the language that we have right now, there are a lot of roads in the city that this is implementable. We can implement this in a lot of different roads. Roads with a history of collisions, roads with a history of vehicular collisions, roads that have higher speeds. We have 30 miles, 40 miles, 50 miles in different areas of town. Based on roadway classification, we have residential roads that we can apply this to. We have collectors, arterial roads, major roads. We have different types of roads. A ratio of collisions based on the volume of traffic on the road can be a factor. This is a map that shows different speed limits on different city roadways. Every road that has 30 miles or higher speed limit in the city right now, the most up-to-date one, I think. And the gray ones are residentials or other roads that have a 25 mile per hour prima facie speed limit. The gray ones mostly do not have a speed limit sign on them. We usually only have the speed limit signs on the 30-plus ones. For that 20% purposes, I asked our team to create a table that shows all of these roads that you just saw in the previous slide to see, because we had, if you recall, a 34-mile maximum. So we evaluated all of our different roads to see how long they are, all of our roads that have 30-mile or higher speed limit. The total ends up around 45 miles, so it's about 10% over the maximum that we're allowed to use, that 20%. That being said, we still have the option of using that second category, which is the vicinity of pedestrian generators. So then again, how we choose this implementation. This is another picture. It kind of shows you the second area, the high concentration of bikes and peds. So I put some circle. These are quarter-mile areas. The light green is educational. The light, I guess, brown is the retail, medical, parks, and there are a lot of other circle that I didn't add. If I add all those different circles, that is basically opportunity potential for lowering. This might cover a lot of the areas of the city without even needing to use that safety corridor, that 20%, just going off of quarter mile of these land uses that generate, as you can see, signals are in there, or the table included like bike lanes. So just because we have a traffic signal within quarter mile of that is considered a high concentration of bikes and peds, and we have like 50-some signals in the city. So there are a lot of opportunities. I don't want to say we can do it anywhere we like, but chances are any street segment, residential or higher speed we choose in the city, 80-90% chance we can find a way to lower the speed limit. This is a timeline. You're reviewing the summary of AB 43 tonight. Based on your direction, we go evaluate different corridors and identify the method that they can be included in one of these two categories, safety corridors or high concentration of bicycles and pedestrians. We'll come back in March with the ordinances, obviously implementable from July 1st, that would categorize these different streets as streets in the city safety corridor or streets within the vicinity of high concentration of bike and ped generators. From April to June, July, we hire a contractor, we replace all these signs or purchase them and wait for that date and then install them within a week after July 1st. Now, how this would work, it depends on, the first 30 days we'd have to issue citations, how our sheriff's office and how our deputies are successful at courts. Obviously, there will be a lot of challenges the first few months. Attorneys would try to poke holes into the process, CVC language, how MUTCD interpreted that and how we used it in the city. We'll know a lot more. I can see some revisions, maybe 6 months, a year after this, but we want to be ready. We know how much Council and Mobility Traffic Safety Commission wants to lower speed in the city, so we want to be absolutely ready and pick your brain tonight, get direction, come back in March in advance of July 1st, and have everything ready so July 1st we have a lower speed limit in the city. Sorry I went too long. I just wanted to make it clear what we're after tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm open to questions, Mayor.
Thank you. And how are you able to predict that attorneys will do that? I was just kidding. That is their nature. Yes, you're right. Can you go back to the slide that has the map on it?
The speed limit or this one?
Yeah, that one right there. So El Camino Creek is in Carlsbad, that elementary school up there, but maybe it's close enough to create. So essentially that oval that's in red extends into Carlsbad. Now, and then Degano School isn't on there, but I guess one of the questions is, have you heard anything from City of Carlsbad traffic engineers and whether they are planning any changes under AB 43?
I have not, but the meetings we have with the county traffic engineers, the different city engineers, pretty much everybody's looking into this. I think we're a little bit ahead because we want everything to start July 1st, but everybody will be doing so. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yes, I definitely want slow speeds, and I think that this council has indicated that, so I appreciate you bringing this work forward. Are there any public speakers?
Yes, we do have one. Michael von Neumann.
Let's hear from Mr. von Neumann.
Evening, Michael von Neumann, live in Encinitas, and council, mayor. This is great news. I think we should go full on. I want to thank the staff for being creative and wanting to maximize the amount of areas that we can lower the speed limit. I do think it's unfortunate that the AB 43 allowances, so to speak, really don't allow us to address the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit on El Camino Real between Santa Fe Drive and Manchester. I have no idea how we can get that lower. there's really no reason to have a freeway going through our city. And also with the new apartments that are going to be planned on South El Camino Real, there's even more of a reason to get that lowered. I don't really understand why people think they need to go fast. The distance between Santa Fe Drive and Manchester on South El Camino Real is about a mile. At 55 miles an hour, it takes 1 minute and 4 seconds. At 25 miles an hour, which I would love, but I don't think that'll ever happen, it's 2 minutes, 24 seconds, which is less time than I have to speak on this. And I really don't understand why people would prefer saving a little bit over 1 minute, why they would prefer that than possibly hitting a kid on a bike, an adult on a bike, or someone walking across the street. Have you ever tried crossing South El Camino Real on foot? Nah, you don't want to do that. But anyway, I want to thank the city for doing this. I hope you guys support the staff and getting the whole city a safety corridor. There's no reason why not. So this is great news. Thank you.
Thank you. And I notice we have a motor officer here, and I don't know if you want to take a seat, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on this effort to slow traffic that you could share.
Good evening. As they had mentioned, it's the argument that would be presented in court by the attorneys would be interesting, as well as the opinion of the traffic commissioners. So that'd be, we'll see where they're at. We're also going to reach out to them and the North County traffic courts and see where they're at, and maybe some feedback on this AB 43.
And so when you're doing your job, there's no shortage of people who are breaking the speed limit. Is that correct?
There is not, no.
There isn't, no.
No, there's plenty.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you, Abe. I have a few questions. Could you go back to the slide that showed the chart of those roads? I think it was the one before Mayor Cran's slide that he requested.
This
and
one,
the
or
speed limits? That the one that shows the speed limits.
this one?
Well, I guess that would work. So I've got a few things to say. One is that I think we need to be really diligent about how we use the information you've given us here, that our assessment of what we can do under AB 43, and thoughtful about how we apply it, and I'm excited to help our city do that. I remain concerned about El Camino Real as well. From my perspective in my district, this segment of roadway comes up as a very high concern. Maybe go to the one that shows the uses, the educational uses, that bubble diagram there, or bubble map. So for instance, in the segment of El Camino Real from Santa Fe down to down all the way to Manchester and then all the way to the I-5. We have a private school there, Grauer School. I know they have approached me and they're quite interested in the safety of children walking to school, especially now that the development project's coming in right across the road, the Sage Canyon that's been proposed and approved by the Planning Commission. In addition to that location on El Camino Real, we have the ICA Museum, which is a public attraction. And I could probably go down and name a few other sensitive uses that people walk and bike to and from. It's a wide road. We have an opportunity to narrow it, slow it down, and make it safe for pedestrians and bicycles. So it seems like in so many ways it's a great opportunity. What do you see the barriers are to us wrapping that segment of roadway into what we consider for speed limit reduction?
As I mentioned, the language is written, the way it's written is very flexible. I feel very confident that whatever direction council wants to provide us, we'll be able to implement that 5 mile. We cannot go, as Michael mentioned, to 25, but the 5 mile, the extra 5 mile, basically whatever speed limit you see out there right now, I don't want to say this, but just imagine there is a carte blanche, we can do it anywhere we like. there might be 10% of the roads or 20% of the roads that you like to seed. We might not find a way to do it. But the way the language it is, and these two avenues that we have, the 20% of the city as a safety corridor based on collision history, and this second chapter, which is areas quarter mile within high concentration of bikes and peds, gives us enough leverage, enough opportunities that these are just some of the areas. I didn't include more than 70–80% of other land uses that we can use to justify lowering the speed limit. So don't let this map confuse you. Think about how you want to see lower speeds in the city. Like our traffic commission said, Abe, go maximize wherever in the city you can lower the speed limit, lower it, even go on residential roads, not on every residential road of the city, but within the vicinity of the schools, lower even 25-mile-per-hour residential roads to 20. We like to see that. But that would entail posting 20-mile-per-hour signs on residential roads that didn't have it before. Now, there are some residentials in the city that would not qualify. Now, we have some residentials at 25, some residentials that are 20. That's very different from historically how all of us have driven in different city streets. And now you have some streets that look very residential. There are driveways and houses and driveways, but their speed is now 20, the others are 25. We will have all these options. But that's what we're after. We're trying to see how far we want to go and how we want to focus our energy.
Thank you. I anticipate then, going back to the question about El Camino Real, I anticipate, since that's one of our highest speed corridors, and it's perceived as a regional conveyance corridor. However, we're developing it more as a local, I don't know what the right term would be, but it's more as a local street with sensitive land uses, pedestrian and bicycle. So we've got to come to terms with what is it serving us as, and how can we reduce the speed even more than, it's the highest speed corridor we have. And we know there's been issues and a fatality associated with El Camino Real. So anyway, you can expect more input from me on this as we move forward. Thank you.
Now is the time to provide that input, so thank you for doing that. Councilmember Ehlers.
So I wanted to start with the sheriff about enforcement. In other words, we can lower the speed limit signs, but will it change behavior? And I'll give an example, and I'd love to hear your views on it. In my district, we've got Glen Arbor, Willow Spring. It's a meandering residential street. It's naturally 25. It's even signed 25. But my belief is people go 5 or 10 or even 15 miles an hour faster on many segments of it. So if we lowered that to 20 as an example, and I'm not proposing that, but I'm using that as an example, is that going to change the driver behavior without enforcement? Yeah.
Without enforcement?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my assumption too. So now the next question is, to do this across the city, and it sounds like a great idea, but do we need more enforcement in order to turn that into reality, to get the behavior to change along with the signage?
I believe more enforcement does change behavior. You
Okay.
see it. I've seen it firsthand.
So now switch gears and back to the traffic engineer. Can you pull up, do you have the local roadway safety plan? I thought the data in there, the 10-year survey data in there, page 17 and 18, had a map, has a map of the collisions over 10 years. It's not the most recent 10 years, but it's only 2-3 years old, so it's not too bad. And then it's also got the fatal and severe injury map, and there are two different maps. And I used that too, because I thought I came prepared to tell you this road, this road, this road, this road, because to me, this is all about safety. It's all about Vision Zero. And so data-driven decisions, right? And so I don't know if it's possible to bring that.
It would take maybe 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
I don't have it with me. I have to find it in my personal folder.
I don't know if we can, I've got them printed here.
Yeah, we can. I can't find it in my own folder, you see. Oh, we don't have T-traffic.
I found these very informative and Because the whole idea to lower speed limits is to reduce, maybe you can flip it so it's vertical, north-south. Yeah, perfect. And zoom in as much as you can. So this shows they call it KSI, the basically fatalities and severe injuries. And so immediately, the one that popped out to me, Ballure. What the heck is happening on Ballure with the 3 fatalities in 10 years? Rancho Santa Fe with 2. Leucadia, especially coming down that hill. So each one of these I'm naming off, by the way, are ones I would recommend we start with. Obviously 101, we're even addressing that tonight. So I think 101 is a candidate all the way. And then we could look at others below that where you see serious injuries to pedestrians and bicyclists, right? This is data. We could even update this potentially and look at the last 2 years, but I think this is a pretty good indicator. And I actually like going with the longer. I think the staff report said 5 years. I actually like the 10 years because you tend to get a statistically more valid sample. Now, if you can flip to the accident history. You
Which page is that?
Page 17. I think it's 17 and 18 on.
Maybe the document I have is
Did I get it
different.
right? The PDF, 17 and 18. Either way, this works too. So this is the accident history, and I can't see the legend right now, but obviously the bigger the circle, the more there you go. So, but kind of the same theme going on. I slide it up so we can see South El Camino. And by the way, I support lowering the 55 to 50 on South El Camino. But notice the accident rate drops radically down there. So I believe we're avoiding a problem there. Just I think Councilmember Lyons was discussing all the development that's going in down there. I agree, so I would support that. But if I look at the Encinitas Boulevard, El Camino Real, and Leucadia Boulevard, look at the accident frequency along those. That's where we really need to probably lower at 5 miles an hour right away. So let's see, make sure I named off everything. Saxony, Quail Gardens Drive. I didn't talk about La Costa, but I would throw La Costa in there because the mayor and I walked down there and watching the people and watching the speed survey as we were walking. Most of the people were speeding, right? And then Rancho Santa Fe Road, I could see reducing that to 35. And Leucadia, I mentioned. Ballure, we got to do something on Ballure. I don't know what's going on there, but that is an outlier. And I mentioned El Camino Real. So that's my input on roads. And I just want to say that I don't support blanket reduction on all residential streets to 20. It'd be a signage nightmare. And I think we'd have the enforcement issue would really preclude its utility. So, but I do believe there are certain residentials that may be supportable on. So that's my input.
There is no recommendation for a blanket on the residentials, was there?
No. I was just providing the big
okay.
picture that these are all the opportunities that council has. We're not recommending anything. I just wanted to provide council the options that council has.
And to follow up on his use of these maps, your staff report says you recommend using the recent 5-year collision history of the city to identify high collision roadways to include safety corridors, list with a focus on areas with higher bike and pedestrian collisions. So that was your strategy?
That's the language of METCD right now.
Yeah,
but
okay.
it doesn't say shall.
Well, I think
it says
we
should.
make it a shall. Yes,
Yeah,
we
so-
shall. And I would point out that Ballure, the tragedies that happened there weren't necessarily related to speed, as I recall. They were pedestrians who were crossing at the crosswalk and had the green light, and a right turner off of Ballure picked them off. And so we want Vision Zero. It is a really important program that I think that this city has committed to, and we should continue to, but speeds are not necessarily going to address it all. We're going to have to look at other things, such as should we eliminate. I actually think that currently state law doesn't allow the elimination of right on red, so that's a limit, but there are a lot of other things that we need to be looking at to get to Vision Zero. Councilmember Hinsey.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward. This is exactly what we asked for, and I'm pleased that we have it before us tonight. It's already gone before the Mobility Commission. I just want to voice my support for their recommendation, which is to maximize minimal speeds as much as we can around the city. Let's see, I just took a couple notes here. Let's see, Joy covered my thoughts on Manchester. I continue to think we should bring it down, but that protected bike lanes there are going to be what eventually brings us the solution we need. I think we've got a little bit of an issue where I think you're right in focusing on the places we already have bike and pedestrian activity, but I think we still need to consider what additional measures can we take to improve confidence of people to actually get outside their car and choose trips that are car-free. And the example that comes to mind for me is Orpheus. When we're doing some surveying of students and how they access Paul Eccy Central, they're really nervous about high speeds on Orpheus. And so one example that is a success, in my opinion, of your work in our city, Abe, was to calm traffic on Neptune Avenue, which had high pedestrian and bike, basically everything, you'll see riding down Neptune. And you did that with striping a pedestrian lane in the areas where we didn't have sidewalks. And then you're able to bring the speeds down to 20 miles per hour there, which has been such an improvement. So I hope that for all of these efforts, we can couple it with some additional improvements, like striping, like pedestrian lanes. And I'm also in support of increasing enforcement. So if we need to do more to up the enforcement that we're doing around July 1st, 2024, when this all goes into effect, to gain the reputation as a slow speed city. And I remember when I was driving to college in Northern California, I always knew in King City I needed to slow down because if I was driving more than 65 miles per hour, I was going to get a ticket. So I want Encinitas to have that same reputation. And I think I come from a part of town where we're really proud of our unofficial slogan, which is slow the funk down. And to me, it seems like we get a more vibrant city when we're able to do that citywide. So no real specific input on streets. It sounds like you've got a pretty good handle on the intention, which is to do it in all the places where the land use allows, and then figure out what we're going to do with that last 20%.
Councilmember Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. These are really good comments from the council members tonight. I wanted to just focus in on the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission because, of course, they are supporting implementing it citywide and recommending maximizing implementation. They did recommend a focus on those roads with higher speed limits, right? And maybe you could go to that table to show the roads with speed limits over 30 miles an hour. My question maybe is in how we implement. Is there, when you come back in the spring with a list of roads to recommend based on this input and your additional study, will it be a phased approach you're suggesting? We would go, a batch of roads first, then another batch later, or is it everything all at once?
We are at this time not recommending anything. We're here to receive input and direction. We do have the option of, AB 43 doesn't say if you don't do it July 1, 2024, you can do, so we can come back and do a phased approach. Commission's direction was to maximize. They did start by looking at this map and saying, well, let's start with the streets that are 30 miles speed limit or higher, and then later on added the idea of, because residentials obviously are a concern. Like we have a lot of residential roads, and we will have the option if we want to do it on many of the residential roads, but there are a lot of other implications. New signs, we have to do pavement legends, drivers are not used to it, people are not used to it, backlash might be very strong. Obviously the cost prohibitive nature of like adding hundreds of, it's not going to be crazy expensive, but there will be cost implications. They said maybe focus for residentials, maybe focus on vicinity of the schools. But as said, as I shown you, METCD not only gives us the option of within quarter miles of a school, we have retail, we have employment centers, we have transit centers, we have traffic signals. So we have a lot of similar quarter-mile options around many different land uses if that's council's intent and direction. So I guess usually we don't have that, like it used to be commission or council would say, hey, can we lower the speed limit on this road? And I would say, well, no, the speed survey doesn't allow. Right now the situation is we have a lot of different options, not to lower more than 5, but the first 5, we have pretty much a very, very good opportunity to do it anywhere we like.
And I do
So don't leave
support-
it to me, because I would have to do it everywhere. If you tell me, Abe, go maximize, in March, you'll see probably 90% of the roadway of the city, even residential. If I want to maximize, I think I can go up to like 90. Again, I'm not recommending it. It's not just a lot of work, it's a lot of implementation, hassle, and education, and residents might not like. There's a lot of other factors. That's why we're here. We want to see if we do a phased approach, if we do only on these colored roads and hold off on the residentials, if we focus only on collisions and just ignore the speed limit. If somewhere has a 40 but has never had an injury or fatality, do we want to make it 30? You have all these options.
Right. I think I'd like to see a prioritized list, and maybe that would then lead to phasing, but that would be great. I agree with many of the roads that were suggested here, and also looking at the roads with the higher speed limits, just like the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission suggested. And then the last thing I would just say is housing element, doing some kind of overlay where the developments are going to make sure we're looking at those roads specifically. They may or may not qualify based on the other criteria, but just making sure we look at that.
Okay, thank you. And, for obvious reasons, the focus for me as well is on South El Camino Real near Manchester. It reminds me of the opportunity that we had on Saxony, where we had the senior facilities there that allowed us to lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. I don't know if Westmont of Encinitas and Summerfield of Encinitas, it doesn't ingress and egress directly on El Camino Real, but some of these senior facilities are there as well as the ICA, as Grower School. There's a lot of activity there that I think might allow us to do more. And I think, the point that Councilmember Ehlers made about enforcement is spot on. This council, over the time that I've served on it, has adopted a lot of ordinances that eliminated this, that, or the other. And the weakest link to those adoptions was the inability to enforce those laws. So when it comes to speeding, we have a fairly significant investment in law enforcement in this area, but with this particular step, we may be overwhelming them with these opportunities to enforce. I know that not too long ago, we had law enforcement officers from other jurisdictions join your team and spend a morning enforcing traffic laws. Was, I believe, highly effective. And my hope is that with AB 43, we might see more of that activity, and maybe with other AB 43 cities joining us, and then we join them and focus on that enforcement. The plan that's outlined in the staff report on page 4, identifying safety corridors, and then the roadways with a high concentration of bicyclists and pedestrians, those, what you've listed there, the criteria that you've laid out, to me is really important, super important. So I frankly am very interested in maximizing the use of AB 43 and would move that we direct staff to return at the appropriate time with a list of prioritized corridors and changes to speed limits based upon the conditions that you have in this report. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
I would just like to add a little bit more comment. My first time talking, I pulled out and I mentioned El Camino Real because I had the sense that it might have been missed in your review. But I do want to say two more things about it, about the presentation, and that is that, in my opinion, there's not a single road on that exhibit that shows all the roads over 30 miles per hour that we haven't had problems on. All of the roads in my district are roads that our constituents have trouble with as far as safety, whether it's pedestrian, bicycle, or vehicle safety. So it further supports your approach that you're taking to look at all of these roads in regards to reduction. I do want to add something on Belor just for emphasis, and that is that we've got a combination of things happening there, and Abe, you probably understand this as well, but we've got the senior center, community center, we've got churches, we've got a school. That's essentially just a cluster of activity at several times every day. Visibility is a challenge there as well. We have a vertical curve, we've got a horizontal curve intersecting. So there are some visibility issues. I've seen us use, in addition to speed limit reduction on San Alejo, for example, we have reduced the speed, but also in addition to it, we put flashing speed limit signs and also flashing stop signs. And those two come out to me, and I think we've done other things as well along that San Alejo corridor just recently to help reduce the conflict between vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, and make it safer. I would suggest that when you're looking at reduction of speed and communicating it to the public where there's a change in speed limit, some of those devices are very, very helpful. There's also the one where it flashes what speed you're going, and I've had the public tell me that these are helpful. So I think that's good feedback to get, and especially when there's a change and people are getting familiar with the change. That's it for my comments.
Bruce, did you have a quick comment? Okay, we're ready to vote.
Mayor, if I may, to make sure I understood the motion correctly. So when you mentioned maximize, on the 20% piece, it's pretty clear, 20% of the roadway network of the city. Obviously, we'll focus on that map that showed the roads that higher speed limits 30 or higher. On the high concentration of bike and peds, this is the land use that I put on the screen. Within quarter mile of these, even if it's a residential roads, we will be able to lower to 20. When the motion is maximized means that we implement it everywhere in the city. Because this would mean a lot of our residential roads of the city. Is that the motion?
Well, I think that it would come to us as a list with prioritization, but yes, I would consider, I know on Hygeia, Sirius, Hermes, Union, where I take my granddaughter to school by bike, yeah, we need to slow cars down there.
Understood.
I don't have a radar gun, but it just seems like people are in the hustle bustle and moving pretty quickly. And so that would be an area that I think that we should be looking at 20 miles an hour and signs and legends on the street and more information to try and get people to slow down. I don't want a citywide residential, but in the end, yeah, I want you to come with recommendations for what we should do. Councilman Raylers.
Yeah, I really like your prioritization request in there, because I think that we want to hit the big ones that have the obvious safety issues first. I think we've named particular streets up here. You've got a lot of data to look at to drive that, and then work our way down. And then if we get down maximizing and going all the way into the residential, we can see how far in the residential you can go, maximizing it. We may or may not do that, and some of us may or may not support doing, the lower tier. Or I think Councilmember Blackwell said that'll will lead to phasing possibly, and maybe that's a good way to do it. We take a bite out of the apple here, but before we put new signs on 50 new roads or something like that, we say, hey, let's see how it goes on this first stuff. And I think we still will have to address enforcement in here in order to implement whatever phase we first do. So, but I like the prioritization.
And, maybe we can get GIS to put us a map together that applies all those land uses so we would know where it could be applied. I don't know too many residential streets, if you polled the residents of those streets, that they wouldn't support slowing people down. So, this may be one of those things that really, if you get down to it, maybe we should be doing a residential street citywide 20 miles per hour, but it boils down to signage and enforcement and a lot of things that just kind of make it is that really the direction we want to go? What is the best use of our resources? So I hope that you can come back with kind of a list of things that we could do under this law, and then we go from there.
Mayor, maybe I could make a suggestion. So I frequently get, as I'm sure we all do, requests from the community to slow speeds in certain residential areas, and often the request comes in the form of speed bumps or solar feedback signs or like the flashing stop signs, things like that. Maybe as part of the prioritization, you could bring forward those streets first, because I know we're not always able to do those treatments, but I think responding to where people have asked for it and we've not been able to do it would be high priority for me.
Did we load you up with too much stuff there?
No, I'm just, because we based on our timeline, we're supposed to come in March for ordinance. From what I'm hearing, it seems like we might have another round of discussions when the prioritization list comes in. Maybe we can come back in January, February.
That's a good idea.
One extra round, and then come back with the actual ordinance in March.
Very good. Does that need to be in the motion, or you take
No,
that
I
as
think,
direction?
I think I have clear picture of what council is after.
Okay, thank you. Oh, here.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Appreciate all your efforts. And Deputy, that means you too, yes, and your team. Thanks. Or your sergeant, I see those stripes there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10C, which is a public hearing to consider the establishment of introduction of ordinance number 2023-10 to amend Encinitas Municipal Code Titled 14, et cetera, pertaining to business activity in residence districts, and ordinance 2023-12 to establish a new speed limit on South Coast Highway 101 pursuant to amended Encinitas Municipal Code. And look, they're still in their seats.
I promise I'll be quicker this time. This one is simpler. Thank you, Mayor. So following it, I mean, I guess the chronology is pretty good. Following our previous item, one of the areas that I did mention, it's in the new AB 43 establishment of business district with the new definition. The bill actually does allow us, and CVC does allow us to implement it sooner. The background is similar, as I mentioned, AB 43 and how it changed. I'm not going to repeat myself. One option is to establish a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit in business activity districts. It did exist before, but the language changed. Two separate criteria. Two conditions have to be met. The roadway has to have a maximum of 4 lanes of traffic, and there should be a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit roadway touching this business activity zone after you establish it. So we were directed on looking at El Camino Real before. Obviously, none of these are met. Like El Camino has more than a 4 lane of traffic, and then the maximum, there's no segment that we would be, if we establish a 25-mile, it won't be touching a 30-mile-per-hour segment. We have this opportunity in downtown. What has to be met is 3 out of 4 of the requirements mentioned here. 50% of the property facing the roadway has to be retail or dining commercial. We have to have parking on the roadway. There has to be a traffic control, a signal or a stop sign or something. Every 600 feet, we cannot have blocks longer than 600 feet or segments that are longer than 600 feet with no intersection control. And there should be marked crosswalks not controlled by a traffic control device. We have to meet 3 out of 4 of these conditions. In downtown, we evaluated different segments, and we noticed that we could qualify between D and J. Why we couldn't go south of J all the way to Swami's is that south of Swami's is 35. We had to get it to a segment touching a 30-mile-per-hour segment. So between J and Swami's will remain 30. That way we can establish this business activity district. North of D, it didn't qualify. The segment was longer than 600. Because of that, it didn't qualify for that. So this is basically our recommendation. We had to make some Unicode changes to establish this business district that comes with this whole new lowering the speed limit and establishing a business district, activity business district. Thank you, Mayor. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, and this is a public hearing, and we just received the staff report, so now I'm going to ask council to disclose any other information that they have received that is not included in the staff report.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose.
And I have nothing to disclose. Are there any preliminary questions?
Just a quick question. If we did implement a crosswalk between B Street and D Street, would this section be eligible to lower the speed limit?
I have to go back and see if it was the only condition that wasn't met. Do you remember, Joe? The notes. We have a small segment that we have parking right north of B. We might, but I'm hesitant thinking about a mid-block crossing. There is a little bit of a slope. There is a grade there, and we had that motorcycle. I mean, the speed sometimes goes up pretty. It might be. I mean, if that's council's direction, we can look into it. I mean, we might not have the 50%.
I'd be in favor of that because there are certain fears I have about the intersection there at Highway 101 and B Street, that there's a lot of speeding that goes through it. And so if they were not accelerating through that intersection, either on the downslope or coming from the freeway, I think that would be helpful for that area.
If council wants to provide direction, maybe with a motion to approve this, you can provide that direction to staff to look into possibly expanding this by potentially adding we can look into it to see if we can introduce a new mid-block crossing, maybe, where we have that opening, maybe. Yeah, I can't promise right now. I got to look into this a little bit more. Yeah, the 50% business properties around it. I mean, we do have pretty much 50% on the, like half there on the east side. We have it. We have a few on the west, just north of D. We have some. We have the gelato place, and we have some.
Okay,
So
I think that I would support a motion that included analysis of that as part of it. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, and I'll make that motion with that adder. So in our staff briefing, one of the discussions is we couldn't go south all the way to Swami's because of the 35, but if in some future action by July 2024, we do lower to 30, we would be able to push that southern boundary of this business district also further south to potentially Swami's. And then when we were looking at the accident map, the dip down to Encinitas Boulevard and the dip on the other side has some big circles where there are quite a few accidents there. So the motion, I guess, that we're now considering would be, could you go look at that segment, including going up the other side, and see what the limitations are precluding us from making it all part of this formal business district and extending even maybe a block up into Leucadia or north of Encinitas Boulevard.
up to A.
Yeah, because that's where we see quite a few accidents. So if the rest of the council is okay with analyzing that.
Well, hold that thought, motion maker, and we will open the public hearing and hear from the speakers.
Yeah. Whoops.
Michael von Neumann?
Michael, the king of Slow Speed City right there.
Michael von Neumann, live in Encinitas. I may have a solution for your situation, and that is, in the presentation Abe had previously, that the city can also reduce speeds in areas with a high concentration of pedestrians and cyclists. So essentially, and it could be lowered to 25 miles an hour. Essentially, that covers Coast Highway, it's not really a highway, from La Costa Boulevard to the Solana Beach border. Because if there isn't a larger concentration of pedestrians and cyclists in Encinitas along that section, I don't know where else that would be. So rather than having a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in streetscape area, hey, maybe we can go down to 25 for that whole section. So just a thought. But obviously, I encourage this business activity district. It's a shame we can't do it on El Camino Real. And the problem is with, I think the question would have to be, and the challenge for the city is, how do you step down the speed limits approaching Garden View on El Camino Real going south? How do you lower that speed? Is it possible? So, rather than saying, oh, we can't do it because of, maybe we need to think, well, how do we step down the speed so that we can have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit before El Camino Real, that whole business district? Because if there isn't a bigger business district in Encinitas, I don't know, other than El Camino Real, I don't know what it is. I also just want to make a quick comment. A couple people mentioned golf carts. Golf carts are great. They're electric, but they're only legal on streets of 35 miles an hour or lower. If I want to get rid of my internal combustion engine car and buy a golf cart to tool around town, from my house, I cannot legally go to the grocery store. So let's lower the speed so that we can use street legal golf carts to get around our community. Thank you.
Yes, and I think Michael's right about the potential for lowering speed limits on Highway 101 because of the cycling, but it doesn't change the law about these business districts that we are able to adopt prior to July 1st. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so back to Councilmember Ehlers. You wanted to make a motion?
Did you want to close the public hearing
Oh.
first?
Closed.
Thank you.
So I'll make the motion as we said, with the direction to analyze 101 from Swami's up to, is it A Street? Is that what you said? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Well, Swami's to J would not qualify because it wouldn't touch a 30-mile-per-hour segment.
I think what I'm asking is just come back and let us know how many factors preclude it today, and is there a path in the future, maybe in 2 years, 1 year, after July 1st of 2024, that could get us to a contiguous business district as defined in AB 43, where we have control all the way down to Swami's, because the pedestrians don't stop at the southern end of where we're talking about the business district. They walk all the way down there and really even, further. Swami's is really where the crossing is. So seems like that is the ultimate solution we'd like to get to, is safer downtown business district, north to south. And on the northern end, I want to include analyzing for now. I understand we're doing, as described in your recommended action, we're only doing a small segment in the middle, but I want to analyze and understand what precludes it on the north end too, across Encinitas Boulevard. What factors, are there factors we can fix later?
I second your motion.
Okay.
Councilmember Hinsey.
I support the intent, but I wouldn't want it to hold up the implementation of what is before us tonight. So is that going to be possible with the motion that's on the table?
Yeah, absolutely. The current staff recommendation is from J to D, and we can come back at a later date with presenting these extra southern and northern segments, hopefully before this whole July 1st, and we'll come back and say, this is not possible, this is possible, and then council can provide additional direction. But we can't implement this current segment.
Great, thank you.
And I would say that, for me, a memo would be fine. We don't necessarily, just to know to kind of evaluate that, how do we grow this district to include from A Street to Swami's or wherever, and tell us what our holdup is and what limits, what causes the north and south end stops, and how far we can expand it.
Absolutely.
And I'll entertain that as a friendly amendment, both the don't slow down, the ordinance update, and a memo response is all we're asking for. It's just to give us future direction so we can help you later.
Thank you.
And so, Tony, I saw a nod. That's, I think, a yes to the second.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to make it clear. So you're introducing ordinance 2023-10 as written,
Yeah.
and then you're introducing ordinance 2023-12 as written,
Yes.
and then you're directing staff to analyze the segment of Swami's to A Street and provide information to council, and it can be in a memo form.
And D Street to A Street.
Yeah,
So it was from Swami's to A Street? Is that the whole segment?
it actually was Swami's to J Street and the segment from D to A,
So Swami's to
because
A.
the in-between is already included in the ordinance and done.
Okay.
City Manager.
Thank you for the clarification, and we would need to proceed with this separately because if the memo shows that you can do that, we would notice another public hearing. If you add other locations that were not noticed for this particular public.
Yes, but we're just asking for,
Correct, but I mean, I'm just saying, even if it comes to it, we would have to have another public hearing for you to approve.
Right, yeah.
So if it's
Yeah.
if it's a no, just a memo. If it's a yes, we'll come back with an ordinance.
yeah, because if the limit is that 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, maybe we explore how to slow it to 30.
Correct. Yeah, after July 1, yeah, don't worry about it. After July 1, yeah, there will be a lot of roads that
Well,
you
but
don't
even before then, I mean, we can
Yeah,
maybe look at, there are ways, speed tables or whatever. You've been creative in North Loop 101. Maybe we need to see some of that creativity on South as well.
We'll look into, sure.
Yep, that's what we want. Thank you.
And unfortunately, we used to have speed limits based on resolution. With the new CVC, everything will be ordinance, so there will be a lot of first reading, second reading. So this same item, business district, I said ASAP, but there will be a second reading, I think, in 3 weeks for the same thing, on consent, obviously, and then it would be implementable, I think, a month after.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
We're done with section 10 of our agenda. We move on to section 11, which is informational items. And tonight, we get the exciting presentation of a construction update from the Pacific View Arts Center. I've been riding my bike by there on 3rd Street, and I stop on the sidewalks often to admire all that is taking place.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the public. I'm Leah Cabrera. I'm here to present the Pacific View Arts Center construction update. These are some of the items that we will be covering, a brief background, some key features of the site, the progress thus far from 10 months ago when we started construction, and then some questions at the end. The site is located at 608 3rd Street. We have here a summary of the processes that staff took in the recent past. We began construction late last year, and we're expected to complete the construction phase in May of 2024, with opening to the public expected in summer of 2024. These are some renderings provided of the exterior stucco features that we received public input on, and these were the winning color schemes. The building will be ADA compliant and meet California's standard Title 24 building code requirements. We've incorporated climate action plan measures and local building codes for energy efficient HVAC equipment, and it includes an all-electric design. One of the key features of the site was we wanted to keep the original window frames seen on the left in the green paint. Because the site was constructed in 1953, it was lead-based paint, and so the windows were stripped, which you see in the middle picture. and then repainted a bronze color. It appears black, but it's more of a oil rub bronze color. Using the original window frames poses the problem of acquiring hardware to make the windows operable, since they are from 1953. As a solution, we've repurposed hardware from the working windows and moved them to the south-facing windows. This will make the north-facing windows in the closed position. They won't be able to open those. One of the features that we've also included was some public electric vehicle chargers in the southeastern portion adjacent to what we're calling Building 2. And Building 2 will house the reception area, and it also has some ADA compliant parking spaces and access into that building. So back in December, we started off the project with clearing the old furniture and trash that was in there, as well as demoing and abatement of hazardous materials that were in the existing building, like lead and asbestos. Early this year, the contractor moved to framing of the building, and this included building up new shear walls to make the building compliant with some seismic regulations for today's standards. In spring of this year, the contractor worked on the wet and dry utilities of the building. There was some upgrades that were needed for the electrical as well as the plumbing of the building, and there were some features in the plumbing that were relocated to other parts of the building. As part of this work, we've included new HVAC enclosures, which you see there on the right side of the screen. It'll be housing the new equipment. Again, all through most of the summer, the work continued on these window frames. It was quite a tedious process, as you can imagine, to strip them and then repaint them and then install new low-E glass in the windows as well. On the right, you'll see installation of the state-of-the-art HVAC system that's going to be located in the soffit of all of the interior buildings. In August, we were excited to close up the interior walls of the building and actually install drywall. So once the wet and dry utilities were completed, the contractor moved forward with closing up the walls and putting up drywall. We also poured some portions of concrete on the exterior to facilitate ADA compliant walkways throughout the site. Most recently, we've completed the mechanical installation as well as electrical. All that's left is to test and commission those facilities. As you can see, we've got drywall up in all of the interior walls, and the windows are all complete. This month, they have begun plastering of the exterior of the walls, and next week will actually be the first coat of the colored stucco, so that'll be a nice aesthetic feature for us to check out. So as I mentioned, the remaining work is wet and dry utilities testing and commissioning of it, as well as installation of the more aesthetic features of the site, such as the steel awnings, the stucco, tiling in the bathrooms, interior paint, and signage. And also we'll be installing some mobility and sustainability components, such as the bike racks and the EV chargers. Again, we're looking forward to opening the site in summer of 2024, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you. And the colors that we see in the renderings, are those accomplished with paint, or is the stucco going to be colored?
I believe it's integrated, is that correct?
It's a through-body stucco color that will be painted over, essentially just to preserve the exterior color finish for a longer duration.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. Are there any public comments? Oh, okay. So great presentation. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see this come to life. With the drywall, you can tell it's going to be a beautiful project. Something I'm really interested in is seeing the parking spaces removed from the front of the building. I know that we have requirements that we have to keep the same amount of parking on site, but I wonder if there's not a better way to back it off the building and maybe put it towards the more central part of the lot. And I know we just updated our stormwater manual, so perhaps there's a way that we can comply with all the stormwater requirements regarding the pavement and removal of the pavement and some of these things that would make it so you don't have car exhaust in the rooms and you don't have the noise of cars and you don't have, a lot of cars have beeping or, things that don't make it very pleasant to be right up where people are creating art. So I understand we might need to put some more money towards that in an upcoming budget, but I hope we're doing whatever we can now to prepare that for when that time comes.
Currently, there are no plans to upgrade the parking lot as far as resurfacing. So perhaps that we could examine that new layout with the vehicles parked in the center of the property when we repave.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
I want to tear off of Councilmember Hensy's comment there because whenever we talk about Pacific View campus and the architectural work we're doing now, I like to remind us all that we're not doing everything we want to. We're doing what we can afford. So it's a matter of managing expectations. I completely agree that it'd be great not to have that asphalt right up to the entry of the building. But and if there's something we can do, if we learn we do have some additional funding that we could contribute to reassessing that, I think that's a valuable way to put our resources. But there are so many other elements of the outdoor space that we're not able to afford with this round of funding. I think we know that. We have agreed to move forward with this really amazing restoration project, and it's going really well. But it's really the footprint of the building and then the parking as close to the building as possible because of the limitation on the funding. But as we all know, this is a beautiful location. This is a beautiful campus. The old schoolhouse is right there, right across a gravel expanse that's like enormously ugly. It's got an ugly chain link fence around it. It's got all these things that really we're going to, as soon as possible, realize we want to change. And I think we know that already. We've got our master plan. Even though there's been some changes, we do want to include making the site as amazing as the building in the near future as soon as possible. Some of the illustrations are gorgeous, but I just want to remind people we're doing nothing on the site right now. So, for instance, the masonry wall, that's not part of this, is it? Or is it?
It is not. There's an existing block wall there that will remain there.
It's the existing wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just point that out. It's not a criticism. I'm not criticizing anyone. I just want us all to remember there's still a lot of work to be done. So I have a specific question then, maybe a couple. I know that we were coming in on budget, and I'd like to know where we are with that, because if we do have some money left over, there are some things the city probably would like to. So can you give me a report on that?
Yes. I have here listed the original contract amount, which was about $4.5 million. We have about $1.7 million of that remaining, and that's work that the contractor has to do to get the site usable. And then what we have some construction contingency, and IT has provided me some public education and government access funding money to support the construction of their broadcast room in there, which is what the use for that kind of funding is for. Of that, we have $284,000 remaining, but $184,000 of that is spoken for in changes that have come up. There's been water damage on the exterior stucco, issues with blocked sewer lines that we've had to address during construction. So we have about $100,000 left, and we're compiling a list and asking the contractor for cost proposals, but one of the big items will be a site security that was not included in the original contract, which I think would be important to preserve all the work that we're investing in this site. We are aware of the need for the parking and the aesthetics, and one of the items that we're considering is also providing some electrical so that we can install irrigation in the future for landscaping. So yes, myself and Parks and Facilities, we're getting a list together and trying to prioritize that.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Could somebody remind me if we have graffiti coating as already included in our base contract after the stucco's applied? Is that something that would be recommended, and is it included? Could that be answered?
We don't have any anti-graffiti coating for the exterior walls. However, it's stucco. It can be easily repainted. That should be too challenging. Normally, we would do that at like exposed block walls, that kind of thing.
Right. What's your experience with using that product on stucco?
It more or less winds up being more cost-effective to simply repaint.
I see. Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. That last picture that shows the front, I have noticed that they're preparing the ADA access from that E Street opening there. Is that correct? So there will be an ADA compliant ramp there?
I'm not I know that we have an ADA access on the south side, but
No, that's correct. From the north side, there's an ADA accessible ramp. That's your primary accessible path of travel from the public right away.
Right, and it shows greenness there. Is that the future vision, or is that going to be sodded, or what is that about?
It is not included in this current contract.
Okay.
We were hoping that we could use some of the leftover funds to landscape it, but there are some security issues at the site that we would probably have to fund before a landscaping was considered.
And some of those trees are not currently there. So there again, we are dreaming of our arborist future, right? Arboretum, whatever we want to call it.
There are some existing trees. Let me go back.
There are some. It's a funky tree out front there.
Oh, I can't really.
I don't think that's a technical term, but Kelly used it earlier tonight. So funkiness seems to be in the air. But it's a wonderful presentation. I'm very pleased to see that it's looking like it's going to be a summertime opening. I think the city manager recognizes that we'll want to have quite a celebration as part of that opening and ribbon cutting. That's something that I have been looking forward to for many, many years. And I also want to add that in November we will have the uses back as a action item to consider how we're going to furnish these rooms and what activities will be taking place. Is that correct there, Director of Development Services? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. Seeing no other speaker requests, I will thank you. Councilmember Ehlers.
Just on what's up there today, what is the building between the schoolhouse and Pacific View? The kind of, is that a temporary construction?
It's gone.
It's gone. They demoed that.
Oh, I was looking at it the other way. There's nothing there, and then I thought, did you bring in some temporary? So this is an old photo. Okay.
Yes,
Thank
it was
you.
taken at the very beginning.
Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate the efforts going on over there. And tell Conan that I appreciate their efforts especially. So does Rosemary and many other in the arts community. Okay, 11 is done, 12 is none, 13 is council member reports pursuant to AB 1234.
Nothing to report.
I just wanted to congratulate Encinitas resident Jake Marshall, who just qualified for the most prestigious championship tour of surfing. So for the 2024 season, he'll be surfing, and it's just amazing to see the athleticism in our city and also where it meets our beautiful nature. So congrats to him. And maybe he'd want to join us for a proclamation or something in the next couple months.
I'll just report on two items. One is the City of Oceanside and their efforts under the title Re-Beach, where they're considering how sediment moves along the coast all the way from Oceanside down to Del Mar. I'm in the role of going and participating as a juror and bringing back to the city and city council what I've learned. Last night there was the second workshop for the three firms, the three teams who've been selected in this competition to come up with solutions that retain the sand in place and demonstrate how they work, how it works, and how seasonally it might change, and what the materials might be, and get input from the public. So this is their second opportunity in a workshop to get input from the public. It's an interesting process. Alongside of them, these teams in competition for a solution for retaining sand on the beaches is a study that's being conducted by Sandag, which was also presented last night as kind of an ancillary activity that will help us improve some data and improve the analysis of how the sand in the water actually does move. We do have some data on that already, and Sandag has an ad hoc working group, task force, I think it might be, that is evaluating that over the next 18 months to improve our knowledge and our data on sand movement in the ocean along the littoral cell between Oceanside and Del Mar. Also, I want to report that at the San Diego County Water Authority, we have been doing some evaluation of how we look at the demand for water across the whole region that the County Water Authority serves, and we'll be evaluating improved methods as we move forward to make sure we're capturing how water use is predicted, the demand of water use is predicted in the future, and how there might be some adjustments due to conservation and other factors to the demand of water use in the San Diego County Water Authority jurisdictional area. That's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And my report would include mentioning that John Keys of Encinitas Surfboards was recently inducted into the Surfboard Shapers Hall of Fame. I also would report that at Sandag, a couple of very important things have happened. One is that we finally adopted the changes, including a new EIR. It's a, what's it called? Auxiliary EIR, amended EIR that includes the removal of the road user charge. So that has been adopted by the board, and we also took action to appoint a subcommittee and hire a executive search firm to replace the executive director, Hassan Akrada, and I have the opportunity to serve on that subcommittee as the representative of Coastal North County. And it's going to include a fairly extensive search, nationwide search for a replacement. There was also some discussion about the idea of working with co-executive directors, essentially elevating the current deputy executive directors. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I think an agency the size of Sandag should be an opportunity that we allow people to compete for that position. And there's a lot that goes on there, very important work. Not to say that I don't think very highly of the two deputies, but you know, whether they will eventually be promoted to co, or maybe one or the other of them will become the executive director. I think it's a little too early, and that we should allow a nationwide search. So that is the direction that we're headed. Pardon me? Why confine it to the nation? Yeah, so I think that it's probably possible that somebody on the other side of the world could apply. So I don't think we're limiting it, as long as they can get a visa. So with that, Madam City Manager, are there any city manager reports?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We just had a great discussion on Pacific View. I do want to remind people there still is a open survey for folks that are interested in the programming, and that's on our website. You can take a look at it. The link is on the website. And then Monday, November 3rd, Natasha Poremski is an internationally acclaimed pianist, recording artist, and chamber musician. Tickets are available to see her. She looks fabulous. And there are tickets, and you can get that information on the website as well. And then finally, for anyone who has not already marked their calendars, Saturday, December 2nd is the annual holiday parade in Encinitas, so mark your calendars. Thank you, Mayor.
City Attorney reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report this evening.
Thank you. City Clerk reports. No reports. Okay. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you all.